Alright, I want to welcome everyone to my 4-liter patch job rebuild. And the reason I say patch job rebuild because I am not doing this by the book exactly. I am doing this cheaply, efficiently, and what I know I can get away with. So with that said, you should know that this is not a how you should do it rebuild, but it will work in a certain situation when the engine you tore apart, example this one, had no major issues, and the only issue I found in this whole motor was very worn valve train. Everything else in this motor was pretty good for 200,000 miles. With that said, I'm only refreshing it and doing a few checks in order to get this put back together. I'm going to try this camera setup where I have a GoPro on my head so I can use both my hands, but also you can see exactly what I'm doing, hopefully, and there'll be some pictures, a little bit more detail in. So, getting into it, looking at the old bearings, and there'll be pictures, the main bearings in this thing had very little wear to it. Some scratching, that tells me dirt has gone through this, or poor maintenance has been done to it a few times. But other than that, the main bearings on this engine were actually very, very good, which tells me the crank's not bent in any way, there's no out around in any way. I see nothing wrong with this engine. Everything was original, even the Ford bearings with their Ford part numbers on it. Everything was very good. So, with that said, I'm going to be removing these caps, put the new bearings on, and I'm going to plasti gauge check the oil clearance to give me an idea on what my oil clearance is. I'm pretty sure it's pretty good, but I'll check it and you'll be along for the ride. I don't have a dial indicator at home to check the crankshaft end play, but as I said before, since this motor was running beforehand and had no major issues, just minor valve train wear issues, I'm not going to really worry about it. One thing I will say about the bearings, the rod bearings had a little bit more wear on them than the mains, and you'll see that in pictures. The rod bearings had the first layer worn through almost to, well, it was to the brass. You could see some brass showing through. That's kind of due to longer extended oil changes and some dirt going through, but didn't have a whole lot of bad debris go through it. As I said, this motor is a prime candidate to do this because the wear on it wasn't that bad. The maintenance was decently well, and from looking at the old bearings, there's nothing I see detrimental problem with slapping this back together the way I'm doing it. So, if you want to know more about bearings, I'll have a link in the description and sort of a preview. Alright, so I'm going to quickly go over some information that would be useful. Mahle here makes engine bearings, gasket kits, a lot of things that you can do, or a lot of things you can buy from them, and it's pretty decent company. My rod bearings are actually from this company. They have this right here, and I'll put the link in the description. They give you a full brochure on how to read bearings. It's really, really well thought out, and you'll be able to understand what the wear is and what you can get away with practice when you can read the old bearings. So you can click this, download the PDF, and basically give you a table of contents. They'll go over possible causes. More failures happen because of dirt, but they go over how bearings wear, the signs of bearings, foreign particles. See, mine had a little bit of this, but this is more drastic if you look at it there.
See, this is like normal wear. Mine's mostly like this. There's very little of, few of them have scratches, but these are bearings that just had crap go through them and probably nick the crank, and this is where you have to pay attention that you might have to get your crank machined. But you go through this website, you can find this. I'll put a link in the description for it. It's very well thought out. It's very good information. Look through it, read it, understand it, and that's all I have for this.
Alright, back from talking about, ignore the screaming in the background. So back from talking about the bearing analysis. Again, you'll see the stuff in your description, but what I did just now is take off all the main caps. Number 4, 3, 2, 1. They all go this direction. They all go on one way. There is no mixing them up. They have to go in their exact same spot. One way. You can't mix it up, or else you'll be creating yourself problems. So, blew out all the oil galley holes, wiped everything down. Now I gotta grab my bearings. My piece together rebuild bearings here from Sealed Power. They're not a bad company. I've used their stuff before. What I'm going to be doing now is setting all the bearings in there. We're going to be putting the crankshaft in dry with plasti gauge, torquing the cap, A-cap down to give me a good idea what the oil clearances is. As I said, I'm going to be doing A-cap. I'm not doing all of them. This is basically just to give me a good idea what the oil clearances of this motor is. That's the wrong side. Here's it. It does matter. There is an upper, there is a lower. That's the oil hole that lubricates everything. You don't want to put the lower or the cap one in the upper, the lower in the upper, because then you will have no oil pressure, and then you'll seize the bearing to said crank. Alright, all these are the cap ones. So put this down. I'm going to go grab the crank. Kind of just, you can kind of see the inspection, kind of see the journals. Main journal, main journal, main journal. This is the one with the thrust washers, and then the main journal on the end. This was in a bag within the cab of the truck. I took the flywheel off of it, or the flex plate, whatever you want to call it. And I'm just wiping everything down real quick. Grab my blowgun. Just make sure. This thing was in a covered pretty well, so I don't think there's going to be that. Yeah, we're pretty much good. There's no big debris in there. We'll be fine. Again, patch together rebuild. Grab the crank. And I'm putting this in dry because plasti gauge. And I don't want to smash my finger. And my rod caps are kind of in the way. Main caps are kind of in the way. And I'm stepping in oil. Don't want to do that. Very carefully, move that sort of out of the way. I think what I'll do, get a Alright, journals all feel good. No rust on them. It still has oil all over it, so we're good. Alright, what I'll do is I'll plastic gauge number 2, and it'll give me a good idea. I gotta get a screwdriver and push that bearing back down a little bit. So, I'm gonna go grab some stuff. Alright, I got some plastic gauge on there. You might see some better pictures of it. I might just do 1 and 2. Do torque down 2 first, and then torque down 1, and then loosen them. Again, we're going to do dry. You can't spin it when you do this. I got some plastic gauge on both of them. I got this. Basically what you use. Clearance range is 001 to 003. The normal spec is .0008 to 0015. It'll be, you'll see it on your screen. And then there's an allowable, which is the parameters open a little bit more, but that's like the very, very maximum or minimum you really can have it before you'll have issues. Even then, it's like at your own risk. But we got some of this. It's on there. Grab my caps. Oh, alright, there we go. As you can see, nothing on there. There's no big debris in the way. So this, we got number 2. See number 2 labeled there, arrow facing that way to the front. First you torque it down to 25, then to 72. I'm going to do number 1 now. Again, same thing. 1 facing forward, or better, key lock for the bearing on the same side. Alright, they're torqued. Get my socket. Grab my ratchet. Kind of see in there. where it squished it down some. Squish it down there, squish it down there. Those are pretty good for what they are. And grab our gauge here. So on here you have 001, 0015, which is the max. I really want to see it. Or 002, which is allowable, but let's see. And when you kind of look at that, it's a little bit less than 0015. So, realistically, this is actually, I'm making this a mess, but this might, if I actually measured it correctly, it might be 0014 or 13. The way I'm seeing this. If I actually measured it correctly, though. You'll see a better picture of it, but yeah, the way I look at it.
Alright, let me revise what I just said and go over some context, and because of my dyslexic. This is actually, if you look at it, the more it squishes out, if you're looking at where my mouse is, because this is the one I was using, the more of the wax getting squished, the less clearance you have. The less of it getting squished, the more clearance you have. I got my thing in my head mixed up when I recorded that video. But so if you look in the picture right next to it, and you can kind of see where the wax residue is, it's almost 15 thousandths, but not quite. So in reality, this one, this crank, what's the word, clearance, is actually a little bit more than normal, and it's in the allowable range, probably about actually 16ths to 17 thousandths. And realistically, that doesn't bother me because I bought a high volume oil pump. If you use a stock oil pump, you'll be okay for the major components that need lubrication, but it'll probably end up the same way this motor ended up the 200,000 miles later, with having valve train wear issues because of lack of oil delivery. So it's actually good that I bought a new oil pump, and I bought a high volume oil pump, standard pressure, because there is a relief valve to keep the pressure from going up too high. But oil pressure is only created by a restriction within its path. So oil pumps do not create pressure, they create volume flow. And having a higher volume flow will create more pressure because you have more flow going up against the wall instead of a standard flow pump. So this doesn't bother me. It's still in the allowable range, but I did buy a high volume oil pump, so it will all even out and be fine. But just for clarification on everything.
So clean that off, clean off the bearings, take the crank back out, wipe everything down, put assembly lube on it, and install all the main caps and bearings. Alright, crank's out, plastic gauge is off the crank, plastic gauge is off the bearing. All you need is a rag and some brake clean, and it'll wipe right off. All this is wax. So now I got bearings are wiped down. Got my white lithium, white assembly grease. I use this stuff at work all the time. Whoop! A little bit runny. We're gonna. Sorry for that hard cut, but we got the rest of it installed. Got assembly lube and all these Take the crankshaft. It's been wiped down very carefully. Set it down in here. Just like that.
Grab the number first.
And we're just going to lube everything, set it in there. Once they're all set in there, the first three. Then I'll go over the last one for installing the rear one, because that one has to go on a certain way. Lock goes on this way. Grab number 2. Yep, see, it's pretty much gone. You can't really feel it. It's just wax. This is number 2. Alright, those gotta be torqued down. And get the other ones set on there. Be back in a moment. There we go. Number 1. That's wrong way. Don't. Lock. Arrow facing forward. 1, 2, 3. Arrow facing forward to the front of the motor. We're good. Grab torque wrench. 19. $25 first, then 72, and then we'll get into putting the back one on, because that one's a little bit different. Some of them I went over a little bit, that's acceptable. Those are all done. Let me set up the back one and we'll go over the back one. Alright, we're on to installing the rear main cap here. Now, because the rear main cap also holds the rear main seal, you have to do something to the rear main cap in order for you to not have a hair pulling out oil leak on your side. If you look, I got some blue goop here. This is a Flexa gasket. It's like a gel. It's meant to seal machine surfaces. If you don't put gel here, it will seep oil out through the rear main cap. Now, you only want to put it at the end there. There will be a picture on your screen that gives you a little bit better context. And you very carefully start these ones. Now this one, because of how big it is, I'm going to grab my plastic mallet here and very carefully beat that down in there. That's okay if you see it ooze out on the sides there a little bit. You can always just grab a pick and you'll need to shave some of that off for the rear main seal. I'll do that in a moment. Just make it flush with where the rear main goes, but that's in there. Now we can tighten down number 4. And we'll be golden. That's she all good. All torqued. Grab a rag. Alright, so now I should be able to... That spins nice. Ooh, yeah, that spins nice. Oh, feels like honey. One finger. Ah, yes. Yep, that's about what you want. It spins really nice. That's basically how you put on that rear main cap. There'll be a picture about that gel on your screen. It's really simple. That's the only place where you need to put that gel, just so it don't leak out the edges here. You will have to get a pick and scrape some of the inside there out, if you can see in there, for where the rear main goes in. But just so you don't have a giant blob, but that will have to cure. But that's pretty much the crank install. Some overview. Next one will be we'll install the rest of the rotating assembly, pistons and rods. So stay tuned for that. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or any info, just let me know. Comment down below. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. But this feels really nice. And we'll sign it off there.